Hi, in this video, I'll be talking about stance. Now, stance when it comes to singing is the way that you position your body. So standing up, sitting in a chair, walking around a stage, whatever it is that you're doing. And because your voice is a part of the body, your stance as a singer has a huge effect on your ability to sing well. Best singer in the world exercise. I do this exercise with a lot of my students to give them a baseline for where their stance is now and what they could tweak to align themselves even more efficiently for the best possible singing experience they can have. For this exercise, I want you to pretend that you are the best singer in the world and that you're going out on stage to give a performance to your millions of fans. So go ahead and stand in front of a mirror for this exercise. Full length would be ideal. And stand in front of that mirror just like you are about to sing. Take a good look at yourself in the mirror and notice the different things that you're doing with different body parts. Are you trying to, for example, stand up straight? Are you trying to have your feet a certain distance apart? Things like that. Take a good look at yourself, noticing what you're doing, and then check out this quick shot of me standing in an optimal position for singing. Notice if I'm doing anything that's slightly different than what you chose to do. General stance guidelines. Before I go through individual body parts, I want to give you a big picture idea of what to look for in your stance. We all know that poor posture is bad for you, and there's a couple different poor posture models that come up with different people. But it turns out that the most efficient way to stand is also the most efficient way to stand for singing. So that means very little tension, loose and comfortable, but aligned with the way that our bodies, and especially our skeletons, are formed. If you are standing or sitting or walking around in the most efficient way for singing, you might also find that if you have chronically poor posture, this helps you to improve your posture overall and helps with things like back pain and confidence, even, which can be an added bonus to learning how to sing. Here are a couple other things to keep in mind as you are learning to cultivate good stance for singing. Optimal stance will be more physically comfortable, but it might not be emotionally comfortable at first because it won't be what you're used to. So really try to pay attention to your body. And if something feels uncomfortable, think about if it feels uncomfortable because you're doing something new, or if it actually physically, muscularly feels uncomfortable, because that difference is very important. Standing efficiently creates a vertical line through the body. If you've ever done any figure drawing or drawing human beings, if you look at a person from the side, you'll see that there's a vertical line that goes through the body from the top of the head to the feet. While you're standing, especially in profile, looking at yourself in profile in a mirror, looking for that vertical line is a great way to determine if you are standing efficiently lined up. If you are generally stiff or just a tense person, paying attention to relaxation might be a big part of your stance journey. You might need to practice self-massage, stretching, or even light exercise to alleviate some of these symptoms for yourself. A quick 5-minute yoga video can make a world of difference if you find that you're just extremely tense and not able to stand or sit comfortably. Anatomy of the vocal onset. Now let's go through the major areas that you'll want to pay attention to when you're lining yourself up to sing. I'm going to start with the bottom and move to the top. Feet. Your feet are important because they hold your weight. So you want them to be in a position where they're going to distribute your weight evenly. That means that your feet should be about shoulder width apart for most people. You'll notice if you put your feet together and try to stand, it's pretty uncomfortable. I find when I do this that I almost feel like I'm going to tip over. So having that wider base will help you to support the weight of your body and feel grounded when you sing. You can have your feet horizontally on a plane to each other, but you can also have one foot slightly in front of the other. If you have one foot slightly in front of the other, make sure that they're not so far apart that it looks awkward on stage or that your weight is unevenly distributed. Knees. The number one issue that singers have with their knees is locking their knees. If you've been in a choir, a lot of people have an experience in choir where somebody faints because they forget that they need to watch for locking their knees. When you lock your knees, blood pools in the bottom part of your leg and interrupts the flow of blood through your body, which can cause some people to faint. So obviously, this is not something that you want to do when you're singing. It's a pretty big safety hazard. In order to prevent yourself from locking your knees, I actually recommend that you lock your knees on purpose. So push those a little bit too far back and then loosen them so they're not bent, but they're also not locked. They're going to be kind of comfortably in the middle. You also don't want to have your knees bent too much when you sing and overcompensate because that's going to tire you out and look awkward. Locked knees often occur due to weakness in the tendons and muscles surrounding the knee. So if you have chronic knee locking issues, you might want to check out some exercises that are specifically designed to strengthen these muscles. I'll make sure to link to these in the text portion of this course. Pelvis. Your pelvis is a large weight-bearing bone that separates your torso from your legs. Now, this is really important because your pelvis holds up all that stuff in your torso, all those organs, and then everything that comes above that, which includes your whole respiratory system and all the body parts that are directly involved in singing. So this is a pretty important part of your body when it comes to singing stance. In order to do its job correctly, your pelvis has to be directly underneath your torso. A lot of people struggle with pelvic alignment and have their pelvis too far forward, too far back, or slightly to one side rather than directly positioned underneath the torso. In order to position your pelvis directly underneath the torso, take a look at yourself from the side in a mirror. So stand in profile and turn your head so you can see yourself from the side. You can look for that vertical line that I mentioned earlier. You can also note if your pelvis seems to be too far forward or too far back. If it seems to be too far forward, give your toes a little wiggle and your weight should shift back comfortably. If it seems like it's too far back and you're sticking your butt out a little bit, try tilting your pelvis slightly forward. This is called tucking in some circles. If you look at yourself and you see that your pelvis is kind of sticking out to one side from the front, you can easily adjust that so that your pelvis is positioned underneath your torso. Spine. The spine is a long chain of vertebra, connective tissue, and cartilage that extends from the bottom of the skull all the way to your tailbone. It's a pretty large structure that resembles a gentle S shape because of two big curves, one in the lumbar and one in the thoracic spine. It's also a lot thicker than people realize, especially near the bottom. The large lumbar spinal discs extend to nearly the center of the torso if you count the extrusions that kind of stick off of it. So this is something that doesn't just run along your back. It's really important for weight bearing and structural purposes in the body. Because the spine isn't straight, like I mentioned, it's really important not to think of yourself as standing up straight. In a lot of people, this can cause them to try to straighten out those spinal curves I mentioned, which can cause tension and make you tire more easily. So make sure to honor those curves by encouraging yourself to lengthen your spine and increase the space between your vertebra rather than flattening your spine and standing up straight. Chest, shoulders, and arms. Pretty much in this area, you just have to make sure that you are relaxed and open. Your shoulders should be neither too far back, so you don't want to thrust them back in a military posture, nor too far forward into a hunched posture. As a part of this, if your shoulders are positioned well, nice and open, but not too far back, you'll find that it's fairly easy to keep your arms relaxed at your sides if they're not doing anything. Fidgeting is distracting, and a lot of singers fidget, do weird things with their hands without realizing it, especially when they're nervous. So this shoulder position can help you to start to relax your hands. Not that you can't use your hands, but you don't want to do things with your hands that you don't realize when you're singing. With the shoulders, as I mentioned, you want to watch out for slouching, which exaggerates that thoracic or middle curve of the spine, collapsing the chest and the shoulders forward. If you find yourself slouching, look at yourself in profile in the mirror, elongate your spine so you see that vertical line from your feet to your head, and roll your shoulders until you feel you're in a more neutral vertical position. Military posture is something that a lot of my students who have been in the Army or who are in band or dance tend to have, and this is where they're very tense with the shoulders thrust all the way back. This is the opposite of that slouching posture. If you find that this is something that you do, you have the same prescription as the slouching people. Look at yourself in profile. Try to relax your shoulders and bring them back to a more neutral position. Tension. Tension is a difficult thing because you can be lined up correctly and also be squeezing the bejesus out of your shoulders and chest. So make sure that when you are lined up, you're feeling loose and flexible and soft. The neck and the AO joint. Your atlanto-occipital joint is the ball joint where your skull meets the top of your spine. This is a really important spot for singers where the neck starts. And your neck is just a part of your spine, and it shouldn't be jutting off in a separate direction than the rest of the spine. But a lot of singers have issues with neck and AO joint alignment where they stick their head too far forward. I call this the pigeon because this is a motion that pigeons do. And that position puts a lot of strain on your larynx. So that's really something you don't want to do. This is also something that a lot of people do just in life if they are, for example, hunched over a computer or a desk studying or working, which is something that a lot of us spend a lot of time doing these days, or just looking at your phone. To align your neck, remember that your neck is a part of your spine and shouldn't go shooting off in a different direction than the rest of your spine. Look at yourself in profile in the mirror and line yourself up so that your neck appears to be in alignment with the rest of your spine. In some people, you can see a vertical line at the front of the neck when you do this. This doesn't occur in everybody, but there are other methods that you can use if you find that that's not working for you. A great way of aligning the neck is putting one hand on the atlanto-occipital joint and gently moving the head back and forth in a rocking motion until you find that good aligned position. It feels slightly farther back and slightly farther down than most people expect. If your head is in alignment, you'll find that your top row of teeth is parallel with the floor. Another thing that you can do to line up this joint, to line up your neck, is pull the whole thing too far back and then move it forward until it feels normal again. I've very rarely seen people who tend to pull their neck too far back. It could be associated with military posture, but it's extremely uncomfortable, so most people just aren't going to do that. If you struggle with the pigeon, try practicing with one hand on the atlanto-occipital joint. You'll be able to feel when your head starts to creep forward and prevent it from happening. I wanted to address a couple of problematic stances that I run into on occasion. If you have one of these, it'll give you a good idea of how to line yourself up a little bit more comfortably and efficiently for singing. The duck pose has to do with that pelvic alignment and that lumbar spine. Duck pose is when you have your butt stuck way out. That lumbar spinal curve is really exaggerated and it gives you that kind of duck-like curve to the bottom of your back. If you find that this is you, use that tuck position and think about elongating the spine to line things up so you can see that vertical line through your torso. The banana is a stance that's common in singers who reach for high notes. This is where singers lock their knees, have their pelvis too far forward, and almost seem to be leaning or tipping forward, sometimes accompanied with the pigeon. If you find yourself doing this, make sure your weight stays balanced across your feet. Make sure that your knees are not locked and settle yourself into a more back and down position that feels relaxed, even if you're singing a high note. Cow pose is popular in rock and metal, and it features a curled over, yelling pose with the spine, people screaming into a microphone. I'm sure you can see how this is problematic. If you're hunched over like this, you're not going to be able to breathe well. So looking at yourself in profile in the mirror, curling yourself out of that position and keeping your spine aligned is going to help you to fix that. If you do want to, or if you find yourself tempted to hunch over the mic when you're singing high notes, try bending instead. It'll have a similar effect and power without compromising your ability to sing well. The singer's stance in various positions. Obviously, we aren't always standing still when we sing. We have to do a lot of different things when we're singing. So I want to address a few of those positions and any complications or things that you'll need to keep in mind to make those adjustments. The seated singer's stance. This happens to a lot of people, especially if they're in choirs or long rehearsals, things that require them to sit. Some people perform while seated on a stool, playing another instrument. You have it. So if this is you, you pretty much want to line yourself up like I described earlier, from the pelvis up. When you're seated, your feet are no longer in alignment with your torso, so it's more important to focus on that vertical line from your hips to the top of your head instead. A lot of people tend to slouch when they're sitting in a chair, so you'll need to watch out for that, as well as military position. Some people find that it helps to have their feet planted on the floor to achieve this kind of alignment. Some people also find that it's helpful to have the sit bones, which are these extrusions that stick down from the pelvis, balanced on the seat. Microphone stance. When singing with a microphone, the number one issue is neck alignment. People tend to stick their neck out for that pigeon position to reach the mic. To combat that, I always encourage my students to hold the microphone unless you're playing another instrument or it's impossible for you to do so, because holding the microphone will allow you to find a better alignment for your neck. Another silver lining to holding your microphone is that you'll have the freedom to move around the stage. If you can't hold your microphone, make sure to adjust your stand beforehand so that you can comfortably sing into the microphone with your neck in correct alignment. Singer's stance while playing other instruments. Playing another instrument like a guitar or a keyboard while singing can be a particular challenge, again, mostly because of that atlanto-occipital joint neck alignment issue. A big part of this is making sure that your setup is neck friendly before the show or before the rehearsal. So make sure to boom your microphone stand out and position your microphone so that you can sing comfortably into it without sticking your neck out. If you must lean forward, do so from the hips, from the pelvis, rather than from the neck. Finally, if you're playing an instrument that lies against your torso, like a guitar or a bass, you can actually use that as an aid as you learn how to breathe for singing. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. The singer's stance while in motion. A lot of us move a lot while we're singing. You might be walking around a stage and engaging with the audience in a rock show, for example, or you might be doing specific blocking, dancing, fight scenes, all kinds of stuff if you're in a stage production. When you are moving around when you're singing, do what you can to keep your alignment correct from the pelvis up. So that's going to be your hip alignment, spinal alignment, chest, shoulders, neck, and atlanto-occipital joint.
Because I'm not getting married. Thank you all, but I'm not getting married. And don't tell Paul, but I'm not getting married today.
One really good way to get a good picture of this is actually watching operas, because opera is usually really difficult to sing. So people have to position themselves well to do it. You'll see that people do all kinds of things in operas, including singing lying down, singing while fighting, while being lifted up. But even when the singers are doing seemingly complicated tasks, if you really pay attention, you'll see that their torsos are aligned in a way that allows them to breathe and sing very efficiently, even while they're doing all kinds of stuff. This is the 5 Minute Singer. So, when you're first learning how to line yourself up well to sing, I do recommend that you really spend 5 minutes a day, very hyper focused on this in front of a mirror or on the mat or sitting, walking around, whatever works for you, but really focused on it. In addition to that, though, stance is really great because you are positioning yourself somehow all the time. And the more you can think about stance or alignment, the faster you're going to get better at it. So the next time you find yourself sitting at your desk or standing in line at the grocery store or standing around at the bar with friends, whatever it might be, think about how you're aligned. When you're doing this, it really helps to know what your personal proclivities are. So, for example, if you know that you have a tendency to hunch, try and elongate the top of that spine, bring your shoulders back, and really relax and align the top of your torso in your everyday life. If you're able to make that change and really hyper fixate on that habit in your everyday life, it's going to be much easier and faster to correct that in your singing. Record yourself. In addition to watching yourself in the mirror, for stance and everything coming up in this course, recording yourself can be a really powerful tool for change. Now, I know it's acutely painful to watch yourself in recordings. I hate doing it. I haven't met anybody who likes watching themselves in recordings, but you might notice if you record yourself practicing or in performance, if you're already performing in public and watch that, you might notice that, for example, you're hunching and you didn't realize it, or you're reaching forward and you didn't realize it. And the more you know, the more empowered you are to make a change. So try recording yourself, try powering through and watch those and see what you learn from watching yourself in action. Remember that when you make these recordings, especially in practice, that you don't necessarily have to do them head on. You can also record yourself in 3/4 profile or full profile from the side if you're watching for specific issues from which those vantage points are more helpful. Meditative singing and stance work. A lot of people struggle with general tension in their upper neck, their jaw, their shoulders, areas that are really important to keep relaxed for a good stance. To make matters even worse, singing tends to give some people stage fright, a lot of people stage fright, which can make you even more tense. If this sounds like you, approaching singing from a meditative perspective can really help you to relax your body and feel better, not just about singing, but in general, frankly. If you already meditate, you don't need me to tell you about the physical and mental benefits. If you're new to meditation, just know that it can really help to alleviate both physical and mental tension, which are areas that are hugely problematic for singing and for life in general. Meditation can help you to clear your mind and channel your thoughts where you want them to go, which is really helpful when you're trying to perform. I recommend practicing meditative singing on the floor, which has a few added physical benefits. When you're lying down, you don't have to engage the muscles that help you to stand up, which can help you to be extra relaxed. This includes the muscles in your legs, hips, back, and neck. Tapping into meditative or mindful practices while lying down can help you to develop a better kinesthetic awareness of your body. A lot of people are so tense all the time that they actually have no idea that they're tense and they don't know what it feels like to be relaxed. If you lie down on the floor and use meditative practices to help your body really relax, you can learn how to tap into that feeling and bring it up off the floor when you're singing. You'll need a few supplies for meditative singing. You can't do this in bed because you have to have a relatively hard surface, so I recommend having something to lie on that can be as simple as a beach towel. I have this exercise mat that I use. You can use a yoga mat. Pick something that works for you. I also recommend having a book about an inch thick. When you lie down, your back tends to extend farther down than the back of your head. So including this book helps you to maintain good spinal alignment while you are in a supine position. This is borrowed from Alexander technique. Lie down on your mat with your head positioned on that book so that your AO joint is in balance and your knees bent so that it looks like you're about to do a sit-up. Take a few deep, natural breaths in this position. With each exhalation, focus on relaxing your shoulders, your neck, and your face. With each breath, imagine that your body is getting flatter and more liquid, sinking into the floor. Once you're feeling nice and relaxed on the floor, you can go ahead and start breathing and making some sound, keeping your neck and your shoulders and your chest and that whole area just nice and relaxed. You might simply start by making a humming sound. Mm. Mm. Or an ah. 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 Or if you're a practiced meditation person, you can do your om or whatever sound you usually make when you are meditating. Just start to vocalize without adding any additional tension that you don't want to take up off the mat with you. Once you're comfortable with that, you can even sing some of your music lying down in this position, making sure that you're not attempting to, for example, lift your head up off the floor or do anything strange with your shoulders. Finally, it's time to peel yourself off the floor. First, go to a seated position. You might want to sit with your legs crossed, for example, or just with your legs sticking out in front of you. And try singing in this position without changing anything about the way that your AO joint, your neck, your shoulders, your chest feel. If you're able to maintain that alignment and that feeling of buoyancy while sitting, go ahead and stand up and see if you can bring that to your fully normal standing position while you sing. This exercise is extremely helpful, not just for stance work, but for breathing, which we'll discuss in the next video.